Okay, so today we're going to learn about how to work with Canadian election study data using STATA. And this is a good tutorial for you to practice learning how to use STATA, how to clean data, and run some very basic statistical tests. So I've opened up the program, STATA, and what I usually like to do is make half my screen the STATA and half my screen the do file. So let's just move this. This doesn't really look. You might have extra things going on over here. You can just X them. I like to keep my variables up, but that's about it. And then what, oh dear, we don't want the news. No news today, thank you. And so what we're gonna do when we start working with some data in STATA is we are going to create a do file. So a do file is essentially a file of all the code of what you would like STATA to do, hence the do file. And you could just type all your commands in here and tell it what to do here, but then you'd lose it every time you did something. You'd have to start all over again. This way you can keep track of your work. You can share it with someone else. So it's really useful. So I just opened up a new do file editor. And the way I usually like to have my screen set up is I put my do file editor on half the screen and my STATA on the other half of the screen. Beautiful. All right, so let's start just with saving this. Save as. Video do file. Perfect. Okay, so we are ready to start working. Okay, so first we are going to need to make what is called a central directory. I always start with clear just so that if I've been doing other stuff, it clears essentially. It's just kind of like a, an insurance policy, I guess, so that you don't accidentally get the red error message of like, you've already done this, stop. So I just start with clear. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set your central directory. That means like what file are you working within? That way you don't have to keep giving the entire file path to open things. You can just say what the file's name is. So I'm working under this. So the Elections and Democracy Labs CES 2019 data set. So the way I'm just copying the path is in just clicking here, Control C, copy, and I'm going to write CD, meaning central directory, and pop in the file path. And that way it'll tell STATA, whenever you're looking for something, you go look in this particular folder. You want to make your own central directory, right? Like I don't want everybody to be working out of the labs directory. So what you're going to want to have in your central directory, and you can see here is I have my code book, I have some notes, I have some do files that I've been working on. This is your example do file you can look at later. And then I have my data set in here. So I'm also going to want to copy the path for the data set, or at least just copy the name. So CES 2019 STATA 13. Let's go back to our do file. And I'm going to say, okay, STATA, use that particular data set. Notice I have two quotation marks, I just need one. Now, because I'm using this central directory, all it needs to know is I want you to use this particular file. So we can highlight it all, or you can just click run because we don't have anything else here, but I like to highlight what I want to run. And then you're going to press this little button here, which is the execute or do, like, okay, so do file, do the thing. Wow, okay, so it opened up the right file. There's technically a way you could open the file here, file open, but this way, anytime you open up this do file, you can just have it automatically go to where you were working. And so you'll notice a few things. First of all, you see all of your variables here from the Canadian election study. And you'll notice that it's starting to record what you've done here. This is where you're going to get all the results and stuff. Okay, so we have our data set open. This is fantastic. Okay. So what does each variable mean? So there is, you can see the name, you can see some sort of a label here. You can see what type of variable, but the reality is it doesn't really give you enough information, and that's what your code book is for. So the CES code book is right here. And it essentially tells me, let's make this smaller or bigger. It says, okay, this particular variable, here's the question wording. Here are the different variable options and the new number that has been assigned to that option. So some of them had sliders, some had, different response options. It tells you what numbers associated with what response. So let's say we wanted, let's start with an easy one. we're going to look at a categorical variable about whether government is effective anymore. So I'm going to find my variable. Yeah, government effectiveness is the one I want. Yeah, this one. I'm interested in this variable. So governments used to be effective, more effective, used to be better at getting things done. All right. So people were, there's some notes here. It says that people were either randomly assigned to get this question or another question. So just FYI, only half the sample got this question. Okay, whatever. I'm not super concerned today, but make sure you always read the documentation associated with it. So this is the questions people were asked, and they were prompted to say strongly disagree, somewhat disagree, neither, somewhat agree, or strongly agree, and each number is associated with this particular response option. So here's what it would look like if you just want to take a look at what the variable looks like in STATA. You can read tab, so tabulate, and go back to your variable, and the variable name is PES government effective. I'm just trying to copy this. There we go. So I copy that, and you'll also notice if you type like see, you can see government effective. Okay. So we're just interested in this question. It was a split sample, but we'll deal with another split sample later. And there goes one of my pencils. Okay, so if you wanted to just see what this variable looked like here in STATA, you can do just this, highlight tab, do. There we go. So here's what it looks like. So frequency is the number of people who said to each response option, the percentage, and then the cumulative percentage. And then so we had 5,168 people respond to this question, and here's what they said. So there's a few different ways that you can go about doing this. You can also have it with no labels. So if I just added no label at the end, it'd just give the numerical responses, which is just a nice way to check that the code book and what you have matches up. Sometimes, they might make a mistake on a code book, so it's just a good little check to make sure. Okay, so all right, so we want to clean up this variable because currently there is a don't know, prefer not to answer option, and I just want to get rid of those. I've made the decision that these people don't really matter and that I have no theoretical reason to think they fit into any of the other options and that I'm going to just get rid of them. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to clean this variable. I always like to either make a new variable or you can rename the variable. I like to make new variables, but for the moment, we'll make a new variable in a second, but today we're just going to rename it. So you just ren, which means rename. I think you could write the full rename, but again, we're lazy. So we're going to rename this variable here, government effect. Yeah, so I'm just writing, I'm renaming old variable, new variable name, okay? Just because I want it to have an easier name for me to just type in. Done. Okay, so now if I went tab government effect, it would show up the other variable. It would just have a new name. Awesome. Normally you should just create a new variable, but we'll do that in a moment. So let's say I wanted to get rid of all these people who didn't know or preferred not to answer because I have no good reason to think that they are interesting at all. Okay. So I noticed that they are number 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recode my new fancy little variable. Well, it's a new renamed variable. And I'm going to say that anyone who responded 6, I'm going to mark it, so equals, as missing. And so the point here means missing. So let's do that. And now you can notice 142 changes made corresponding to this. So now if I tab gov again, you can see they are all missing, and the total number has gone down because we've gotten rid of these 142 people who couldn't commit to a response. All right. So as I mentioned, though, sometimes you are going to want to create a new variable. Actually, most times I would I'd recommend you create a new variable. That way, if you ever want to go back and like create another new variable, you're not writing over top of your old variable, because now all of these people are just their response is gone. So really what we should have done is create a new variable. So how do we do that? So let's say we wanted to look at political interest. So here is a linear variable, interest. Yeah, interest in politics. So I'm interested in this. It should be on a 0 to 10 scale, from no interest at all to a great deal of interest. So let's just see what this looks like within our data set. Yeah, okay, so 0 to 10, it looks like they already got rid of all the people who said they didn't know. So I'm just going to make a new variable with this. So to make a new variable, you're just generating, or gen. My new variable's name is going to be interest, and I want it to equal this variable here of political interest. All right, so let's see what my new interest variable, let's do it over here in my new interest variable. Yeah, there we go. So it's like the same thing, only it's got a new name. And you'll notice now when I go into my variable list, you can see I have the interest variable, but I also still have the interest. Where's the regular interest variable? It should be here. I should have both. PES interest. Where did this one go? How interested are you in politics generally? Why does it suddenly have a number 1? Okay, well, I can't figure it. I'll have to look at that later and figure out why all of a sudden it has a number 1 after it, because it didn't previously. Okay. Anyway, point being that we have this new variable named interest, and we didn't have to recode it at all. All right, so let's just add some notes in here. So to make a note, you just do 3 stars or 2 stars or 1 star, but I usually do 3 stars. I say like cleaning government effectiveness, and this is cleaning interest, creating new variable. That way you can write notes to yourself or notes to someone else to say, here's exactly what we're doing. So now let's try a harder one to do. Actually, no, let's do one more easy one. Let's do age. So here's a discrete variable, or we can treat it like a continuous variable for age. Okay, so in my code book, age, I mean, it should be right near the top. Post-election survey. Okay, yeah. So sometimes, let's go up here, there should be age, yeah. No, not that one. I am interested in the variable campaign period survey. Age. Here we go. Okay. So let's take a look and see what age looks like. So we have between, okay, so 18 and 99. So there's no missing people we have to get rid of, which is nice. Let's say I just wanted it to be called age, years. Then I could make it a new variable, generate age years, which is going to be the same as this variable here. And let's just see what our new age years looks like. Yeah, so it's the same. It's just has a new name. Cool. And you'll notice that you'll have both age variables in there. The original one and age years, which is why technically I think up here we probably should have created a new variable. But you're going to see why I didn't do it now. So let's do a harder variable. This is voter turnout. Now, voter turnout, again, was a split sample. meaning they asked it in two different ways. So let's just go to the code book. You can take a look at vote. I think it's somewhere down. You might have to, here we go. Voting turnout. So this is the, post-election survey, 2019 voter turnout in 19. Okay, so people were asked two different questions. They were either asked this longer question with all of these response options, or they were asked the simpler question. So the reason they split the sample is because they wanted to see if the way that we asked the question had an influence on how people responded. However, I have no reason to think theoretically that there's a huge difference, so I'm going to combine these two variables together. So this is where things are going to get complicated. So we have regular turnout question, plus we have the second way of answering the question. So voter turnout. So let's just look at regular voter turnout question. There it is. So tab voter turnout. Oops. If you ever get this where things are hard to read, just move things over a little bit and try again. Yeah, that's much better. All right, so we have 3 different options. They obviously didn't label 3 and 4. I think, what did 3 and 4 mean here? I was registered, I wasn't registered, or I don't know. All right, so I have reason to believe that if anybody said yes, they probably did vote. And if anyone gave any other excuse, they probably didn't. So let's start by recoding this variable. So first we're going to create a new variable called voted. And it's going to be just a cookie cutter copy of this variable here. So we have this new variable called, you can also just type in the command box if you just want to like check something out. Voted. Okay, you'll notice though when you create a new variable, it gets rid of all the variable labels. So we're going to go back in and add new labels later. That's why I was lazy and didn't do it here. You create a new variable because I was like, oh, I don't want to get into that yet, how you create new labels for things, because it'll just show the numerical values. So going back to our code book, we know that 1 means that they did vote. No is 2, 5, 6, 3, 4, and 8. All of these options mean no. And here I'm making the decision that if somebody doesn't remember, they probably didn't vote. And if they prefer not to answer, they're probably hiding the fact that they didn't vote. Very cynical, but that's what I'm deciding, and I would have to make a theoretical reason for that. But I would do that in the methodology section of my paper. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to recode now. So I'm recoding voted, my variable voted. And I want 1 to equal 1 again, because I'm going to have voted to be, like if you did vote, it's a 1. If you didn't vote, it's a 0. That's the best way to do binary variables, where it's like, if yes, it's a 1. If no, it's a 0. So, but 2 was a no, you did not vote. So I'm going to make it a 0. 3, which corresponds to the 3 here, which corresponds to the I wasn't registered to vote, meaning 0. 4 is going to equal 0. 5 is going to equal 0. 6 is going to equal 0. There is no 7. So, and 8 is going to equal 0. So essentially, I am taking these numbers and saying, here's what I actually want it to mean now. And that's corresponding to what you see in the code book. So let's recode it. And now let's see what voted looks like now. See, now you can see these are all the people who said, I didn't vote in some way, shape, or form. Either they said no, they said they forgot, they didn't remember, et cetera, et cetera. I have theoretical reasons to believe that they are all just trying to tell me they didn't vote. And then all the people who said, yes, I did vote. Why, thank you for asking. Okay, so the thing is, like, if I was to go back to this later, I might forget what was 0 meaning and what was 1 meaning. So I want to put some labels on these values. All right, so to do that, I am going to create a label. So I am going to label define. So I'm creating the label. I'm not putting it on anything yet. I'm just creating my little sticky label. 1 is going to mean voted, and 0 is going to mean did not vote. So let's create my little label. Okay. Label define. Oh, I need to give my sticky label a name. So I'm giving my sticky label the name voted 1. There we go. So this is a good example though. You'll get little red error messages if you're not doing something right, at which point you have to kind of go back and figure out what it was you were doing wrong. So I created my sticky label voted 1. Now I want to stick this onto this variable voted. So I'm going to label the values of voted with the sticky label voted 1. Bam. And now if we tab voted again, voila, you can see it says did not vote and voted as opposed to 0 and 1. However, if I did it no label and just wanted the numbers, bam, I have my numbers still. Pretty cool. Okay, so let's say I wanted to combine this variable with the other question wording. They split up the sample and they had a version 2. So let's just tab the version 2 of how they asked this question to some other people. So the other half of the people, they asked it this way. It's just a yes, no, 3. What does 3 mean? Prefer not to answer, or I don't know. So I want to combine this with my other voted variable. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean it up to look exactly the same. So I'm going to gen voted 2 to equal this second variable. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to recode voted 2 so that my yes, so my 1 is 1, my 2 is 0, my 4 is 0, my 3 is 0. 1 is still 1. You technically don't have to write 1 is 1, but I like to do that to keep myself kind of in line. 3 is 0, 4 is 0. Let's just make sure that's the case. 2, 3, 4 are all nope. Oh, we already created it, so let's recode. All right, so now let's tab voted 2. All right, so now we're going to create a variable that actually we could label it. Let's just label that. So all we have to do is label values. We've already created this sticky note, so we're just going to label values voted 2 with the sticky label voted 1. And then you can see tab voted 2. Oh, see, I made a mistake here. So I want voted 2 to look like, to have the sticky label voted 1. Tab voted 2. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So now I want to add in the data from voted 2 into my voted variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace voted equals 1 if voted 2 also equals 1. And you'll notice that I have double equals equals, which means also equals. And then I'm going to replace voted equals 0 if voted 2 also equals 0. Okay. Now, if I tab voted, I should have the two of them together. So you'll notice that it combined these two by adding all of the voted 2, so the second question wording, over into the first question wording. All right, so that's example. So we had voter turnout, which is a binary variable, and it was a tricky one because we had two variables we had to put together and we relabeled things. We have age, which didn't have a lot of things that needed to get done to it. Interest didn't have a lot that needed to get done with it. Government effectiveness, if I was to do this again, and you can like edit things here, I would actually probably like generate government effective equals this variable. This is how I should actually have done it. Oh, except I've already, it might say, hey, you've already done this. You know, you can't do it again, in which case this is why I put clear and I just start from the top again. And then I would if I tabbed government effective now, it would be essentially a cookie cutter copy and paste of this, except it wouldn't have any of the labels. So I could still recode government effective 6 equals missing, but then I would have to label define. It's probably like a Likert scale, right? So I'm just going to call it like 1. It really doesn't matter what you call it. Just call your sticky label whatever you'd like. And then 1 was, let's just go back to the original. So 1 was strongly agree. Oh, strongly disagree. 2, wait, where am I doing this? I'm right up here where I have my labels. Somewhat disagree. 3, neither agree nor disagree. 4, somewhat agree. 5, strongly agree. And then we got rid of 6. So let's just confirm that the numbers match up. Yeah, we're good. So that's defining our sticky label, and now we're just going to label values of government effect, with like 1. And then tab, if we tab government effect now, see, that's better. So I created a new variable. That way, now if I wanted to go back and have this original variable, it is there. So like I could look at it in its original form, or I could look at my new form. Whereas originally when I'd done that just to show you to start, I just renamed it. So generally making a new one is preferable. Okay, so we're going to stop there. You have now learned how to clean and the logic of cleaning, and we'll get to statistical tests in a moment.